Good morning, everyone. As Lewis mentioned, am new here to Virginia, so still learning a lot of the sort of details that come with living in this state. So it's Appalachia, correct? Appalachia, okay. I will get that. There are a few towns across the state. It's not Staunton, it's Stanton. Yes, and there are a few others there that I'm still learning, and I'm still coming around on the term on grounds as opposed to on campus. So, but I realize that all of these things are special to the state, and very happy to be a part of it. I'm also a bit spoiled in that this is my first year here, and the basketball team already won a championship. So my thought is this is what happens every single year, I assume. So anything beyond that would be a major disappointment. But it's been a very fun year here so far. As Lewis mentioned, I am the new executive director of the Weldon Cooper Center for Public Service. And one of my earliest sort of goals and charges was to visit the UVA-Wise campus because we do have a very small Weldon Cooper staff there at the campus in Wise. And I'll be honest in saying that before I went to the campus, I didn't do any Googling, I didn't do any image searching, so I had a sort of a picture in my mind of the place where I was going. And much like Chancellor Henry just mentioned a moment ago, the place is an absolute gem. And I was so excited and inspired when I left because I said, you know what, I know that we have a very small presence there now, but is there more that we can be doing? And it's something that has really propelled us within the Weldon Cooper Center to think about how can we live this value of public service through our work, and particularly focusing on UVA-Wise. So it's been very exciting for us to think about these things, and I want to begin by thanking Pace and her team for being as inclusive as they've been for us since, and for me in particular, since I've been here, and also to Shannon and the rest of her team, because in my visits to Wise, they've been very welcoming. They hosted us for lunch in December when we made the journey out there, just to have these initial discussions about how it is that the Weldon Cooper Center might be able to assist. But in those two visits, what became very, very clear to me is that much like other communities that I've been to across the country, and it doesn't matter if it's rural or urban, people care about this concept or this idea of community. It's a big one. And it's one that I know that President Ryan has mentioned quite frequently in his own communications in his first year here. If we look at even the titles of today's event, it's Profiles in Partnership Discovery, Community, and Service in Appalachia. And this word of community means a lot because it really tells us that people want to contribute to their own well-being. So how do we facilitate that kind of approach? Part of that is through leadership, for sure, and I think we've seen strong examples of leadership, not only here today, but in other aspects and other initiatives that we've seen probably in the region. But it's also thoughts on how do we collaborate in those spaces, because we have to have this recognition that public problems, number one, don't happen in isolation, and two, the individuals and organizations that address public problems have to have some thought of working together to fix them or to address them. I want to begin with a brief quote here from one of my favorite books on leadership. It's called Catalytic Leadership. The author is Jeffrey Luke, and in this book he makes the argument that sort of 20th century ways for addressing public problems, where we thought, government must make all of the effort to solve our issues, that mindset is gone. And that if we are building on ideas of community and even citizenship, that we have to look at this interconnected world. So let me just read a brief passage from that, because I think it highlights and sets a foundation for what we will see here on this panel this morning. So it says, the catalytic leader is an elected official, appointed public manager, civic leader, or community volunteer who brings together diverse individuals from multiple agencies to address interconnected public problems and work together towards solutions. Handling societal problems in an interconnected world requires unusual and dynamic partnerships between government agencies, nonprofit service providers, business enterprises, neighborhood groups, and educational institutions. So there is not only a role to play for us in this interconnected world, but I would even go as far to argue that there is a responsibility that we have to work together to address these collective public problems. And in this instance, UVA WISE in particular is a great asset, not only for WISE, but also for the region, as well as we saw in that awesome presentation moments ago. So the question is, how do we get there? From a leadership perspective, there's obviously a lot of things to think about strategically, but at a more basic level, what are the things that we can focus on in terms of building capacity to address these public problems in this interconnected world? And what I think we'll hear about this morning is really putting those ideas into two camps. The first one would be, how do we build capacity in terms of building greater social capital? It's a term that's thrown around a lot, I know, but what does that actually mean? Social capital. At least for today's session, we can think about social capital in a couple of ways. One, the central premise of social capital is that social networks have value. Social capital refers to the collective value of all social networks, who people know, and the inclinations that arise from these networks to do things for each other. Again, it's not believing that I as an individual need to just take care of myself, which might be a first instinct, but how do I extend myself into other circles and try to build up trust amongst people within these circles to improve our collective well-being? The next focus on capacity building that I think that you'll hear about today is, how do we build capacity in human capital? And the belief that every human has something to give and something to offer, but in the instance of, particularly within educational institutions, how do we build up their ability to contribute through skill sets, through education, through knowledge, through the development of values? So there's a belief that all humans have something to give. I often say that citizenship is not about where you live, it's where you give. So how do we build human capital to address those things? So quickly on that, again, just as a foundational definition, often associated with education and training, human capital refers to the development of people and their ability to contribute meaningfully to the well-being of their communities, formal organizations, and society at large. Civil society institutions such as churches, volunteer associations, schools are major contributors to human capital through the promotion of values, beliefs, and attitudes thought to be important to an individual's development. So what is it we can do in these spaces? And I'm getting my 1-minute cue here, so thank you. So that's a lot of what you'll hear about in this session, What I can promise you is this, is that it will be interactive. We're going to have a test at the end, I'm sure, a small quiz, but we will do as much as we can to make the session as engaging as possible. We have a great panel here for you today, and let me just introduce them briefly if they want to begin coming up. First, we have Joy Pugh from the Virginia College Advising Corps, and she will discuss building capacity for educational attainment. We also have Austin Widener and Ben Johnson, founders of Friends of Appalachia. And we also have Becky O'Quinn, who will speak to us a little bit about the RISE Emerging Leaders program that has been developed at the UVA WISE campus. So let's give a round of applause for our panel members this morning. So Joy, you're up first.
Please watch this quick video.
This was kind of foreign to me.
What do I do? What is the next steps for me? How do I get through this?
From the college search to figuring out financial aid, the college application process is so complex. School counselors are dealing with so much in the school and may not have the time to meet with students about college aspirations and goals. So we are there to sort of knock down those barriers. The Virginia College Advising Corps, which is an AmeriCorps program, started at UVA in 2005. We are a public service program, and that public service is in the DNA of UVA. Now it's a national program called the College Advising Corps. Our mission is to assist low-income, first-generation, and underrepresented students in all regions of the Commonwealth to enter and complete higher education. 2-year colleges, 4-year colleges, certificate programs, trade schools.
We'll look at things like size. Does a student want a big school or a small school? Location. Do they want to be in a city or in a rural area? We'll look at private versus public. When I'm talking with students, you get to hear like, my dream is to be a doctor, or my dream is to be a teacher.
If you are interested in science, then let's do something in science. If you are interested in math, if you are interested in social work, then let's be realistic about what exactly do we want from ourselves so we can actually make those proper steps.
For many students, college doesn't seem like a reality until they meet with a college advisor. We're committed to the idea that every student, regardless of their financial situation, regardless of who they are, should have access to higher education. Many of our advisors were low-income, first-generation themselves.
As a first-generation student, I didn't know anything. Now, as a college advisor, I'm here with all these students in a similar scenario. I can answer those questions to help them get to where they need to go.
The college advisor role is not just about the nuts and bolts of the process. Their energy and support helps to unlock the potential of every student to continue in their educational journey.
Education is one of those things that once you have it, no one can take it away from you. And I think for students who maybe don't believe in themselves, that's a game changer. So to be able to walk alongside students as they realize that is why I love this organization.
I love every piece of the job, and I love seeing those students, get that level of success, getting that diploma, and just seeing how great they're going to be.
As we said in the video, so we advise on 2-year schools, 4-year schools, technical trade, whatever's a viable post-secondary step for that student. So even though we're based here at UVA, again, we're a public service program for the entire Commonwealth, but one specific piece about bachelor's degrees, this is from the Kresge Institution, 7 in 10 folks from high-income families will earn a bachelor's degree by age 25, and only 1 in 10 from low-income families do. I'm sure you've seen other stats on how it's better to be a mediocre to even poor performing high-income student than a high-achieving low-income student in terms of educational attainment. And I would say, though we advise on the full range, we're on fire for this. This cannot stand, and so the Advising Corps is moving the needle on that. Again, highlighted in the video, the counselor-to-student ratio. So some folks say, oh, don't school counselors do this. School counselors are quite busy. If you haven't been in a K-12 high school lately, they are dealing with any mental and emotional issues with the students, which are growing all the time, especially in the high-need schools that we're in. And they have lots of administrative tasks, scheduling and testing and all these folks. So on average, they spend about 20 minutes per student. That varies quite a bit depending on the school, but our ratio in Virginia is about 381 students to to one counselor. And that mirrors a lot of our schools. We serve large and small schools, so some variation there. So how are we addressing this mission? We hire recent college graduates, primarily from UVA and UVA-Wise, and they are near peer. Like I said, they're generally full-time, and they assist students and their families with this entire list, right? So the whole senior year and even before that, junior and sophomore year. But everything you need, from that mentorship to believe that you can continue in your education, to very nuts and bolts. Let's sit down and do the college applications. Let's have a college application drive. We'll have a FAFSA night. We'll get pizza. We'll get childcare so that parents who are working 2 jobs can come and bring their tax information. We'll give the student, that list of everything that's needed, right? So trying to take away those bureaucratic barriers, because many of these students are ready to matriculate to 2- and 4-year institutions, and also making that transition, paying attention to summer melt, paying attention to, did you pay your housing deposit? Did you go to an orientation session? Are you worried about what it looks like first year there? Let's talk through that. So that real one-on-one attention to all these students that actually does make the difference in them matriculating. Here are locations across the Commonwealth, so you can see South Side, Southwest, Northern Neck, rural counties in Central Virginia, city schools in Richmond, one up in Alexandria. So we truly are statewide and growing. I have no shortage of emails from high schools that say, we want you, how do we get you here? So those development folks in the room, happy to talk with you later. As the video says, we are part of, or we're the founding chapter of the National College Advising Corps. So this is really amazing that the program that started at UVA is now in 14 states and growing. Actually, they're adding Indiana and Utah next year. And so some of these states are going deep. Utah wants to serve every public high school with a college advisor. So that's going to be 120 advisors over the course of several years. North Carolina also has about 90 college advisors. So we are hoping to follow their lead. And one stat there at the bottom, that 8 in 10 of the advisors all across the country are representative of the populations we serve, either people of color, first generation, or low income themselves. So some stats just about our Virginia College Advising Corps. Last year, we specifically advised almost 4,000 seniors, over 17,000 one-on-one advising sessions, and that's with a trained advisor, right? So you wouldn't go to just anybody, you go to the dentist for your teeth. You want to come to us for college advising. SAT and ACT registration, over 10,000 college application submissions. FAFSA completion is the single most important factor in determining if a low-income student does matriculate to post-secondary, so 3,493 FAFSAs. And the $58 million in financial aid that we helped bring to students across the Commonwealth actually doesn't count federal financial aid. That's institutional aid and scholarships right there, created by the advisors for these 3,864 seniors. So specifically with WISE, this really started with me just saying, I want to partner with WISE, and figuring that out. We report up through the provost office, now through Lewis, who just spoke, but at the time it was Milton Adams. Also talking with UVA Corporate and Foundation Relations to see, how can we resource this? And then getting on the ground in WISE, meeting with Shannon, the provost, economic development and advancement, and Rusty, of course, in enrollment management, who I'm sure all of our Southwest friends know, to make sure that we had support of the college as well to move forward. Because we wanted to do 2 things. We wanted to hire UVA-Wise graduates as our college advisors, and we wanted to serve schools in the region. So you need, obviously, partners on the ground for that. We worked with the admissions office at WISE to really target local high schools. We can look at stats from Virginia Department of Education, but we need to know what counselor is really going to latch onto this, right? Like what principal cares about post-secondary attainment in their school? That's where we want to be. That's where we want to work and serve. We did school selection and site visits, so a pleasure to visit several schools in Southwest, and began our recruitment of UVA-Wise seniors to be our inaugural college advisors from there. So we selected those folks, and in fall 2016 began serving in Wise County at Central High School, and this is my typo, I'm sorry, Norton City. So it's John I. Burton High School in Norton. Lots of interest now growing in Southwest. We will add East Side in Wise County next year, Big Stone Gap hopefully the year after, that's Union High School, and just met with the superintendent of Lee County, which was mentioned earlier, yesterday, and he said, we want you, how do we get you? So really exciting to be sort of on the ground and growing our reputation in this region of the Commonwealth. This brings to life, I think, a little bit. You can say we meet with students, yes, we fill out the FAFSA, but these are the extras, right? This is the value add. A lot of our advisors are connecting on social media. So this is from our current advisor at Burton, who's just a rock star. They both are, Central and Burton. Right, we can tell students cybersecurity is in need and it's a great career and there are opportunities, but you have to make that alive for them. You have to put in the time. So she got, a security analyst from Virginia Tech. I believe he was from the area, to come back, have a talk, with a small group of students and say, here's how I did it. Here's how you can do it. So, similar to the College of Eisenhower model. I just did this, I just graduated, you too can matriculate. And a really cool calendar, which I could never create, right, that lays out for them. The FAFSA opens, here are college visits, here's a super FAFSA night that we're gonna do. So really helping students to plan. Yeah, so we have lots of data points that I could share with you, but I wanted just to focus on a few to close out here. So as I said, FAFSA submission is the most critical step in low-income first-generation students matriculating. So to orient you, this entire slide is FAFSA submission, and then the sort of both columns on the left, those students did not meet with an advisor. Both columns on the right, those students did meet with an advisor, right? So for any group of student who meets with an advisor, you see an increase in FAFSA submission. But the teal are first-generation students, and the sort of royal blue are non-first-generation students. So what you see is the first-generation students completely catching up to the non-first-generation students in terms of FAFSA submission. So that's equity right there. That's on the ground and working. Again, FAFSA submission for underrepresented minority and not underrepresented minority. So same thing, both columns on the left did not meet with an advisor, both columns on the right did meet with an advisor. So you're gonna see an increase either way in FAFSA submission, but our underrepresented students actually catch up and even reverse the gap by 1 percentage point there. Speaking of percentage points, I didn't put this in, but on average, our high schools see a 9 percentage point increase in post-secondary enrollment. So not percent, percentage points. So if 40% of the students used to go that's hundreds and hundreds of students over the years that are now matriculating. Last data point here. So this is just college application submissions. And this looks at GPA, which I think is really fantastic. Again, did not meet with an advisor on the left, met with an advisor on the right. So the royal blue in this case is students with a 3.5 GPA and above, right? So if you're doing well in school, you're probably seeing a college application path, right? You've got that in sight. Teal, less than a 3.5 GPA. A lot of students out there with less than a 3.5 GPA. They still need a next step. So in that case, 47% to 80% now of them are submitting a college application. So again, that is, I think, amazing. I will call it a game changer, much like this. We've all seen that game changer many times. But this is one too. This is one of our students getting into her dream school. For her, this was Longwood University. There it is. I mean, this happens so much on the ground, so I try to get the advisors to, yes, film it so we can share it. This was during Virginia College Application Week. The advisor says, "What does it say?" And she says, "Congratulations." So that's a game changer as well, and that's what we're about. Thank you.
Right here. So Friends of Appalachia was conceived on the steps of the Rotunda as myself and my co-founder Levi Helm contemplated what it meant to be an Appalachian and a UVA student, and we were met with many dead ends. Now, my friend Levi, he's currently at Arizona State University studying or getting his PhD in environmental decisions. So you can definitely say that he was the brains and I was the beauty of the group, because he's going off and doing bigger and better things currently. So Levi was the first person at this university that I'd not had to explain myself to or repeat the way that I'd said things. And he and I found solace in so many barriers and experiences in a bond that often went unspoken. I would honestly dare to say that we agreed on more things that we never talked about and the topics that we never covered, not because time was fleeting and that he was a year older than I, but because our experiences in the area had molded us in very similar ways. Levi became a brother, a mentor, and as we realized that UVA was waiting for our initiative with open arms, he became Friends of Appalachia's co-founder. The foundation that our organization stands on today is an undying service to assisting our people in whatever capacity we can, always ready to answer a call, and assurance that barriers and trials that our members, as well as other Appalachian students at other institutions have faced, are amended. When Levi and I first sat down and began developing what this organization would look like, we were able to really narrow down the hardships and diversions from our Appalachian roots to 3 core areas. First is lack of community and the ability to talk about our experiences. The Appalachian student body at the university has had no arena to discuss cultural issues or exhibit ties to the area, and are unlikely to feel comfortable discussing some parts of their situations with peers from dissimilar backgrounds. They know little to no one coming here, and having some networking already established is a huge leg up from students from other areas of the state. Students at the university level, unless at a college within the Appalachian region, rarely have opportunities to become enriched with their heritage as Appalachians. Not having an arena to openly maintain those connections with home and that culture that influence these students really leads to a disassociation or even embarrassment of being associated with the culture. The second was a lack of collective voice for the Appalachian students. So the Appalachian student body, up until Friends of Appalachia, had not really had an opportunity to present themselves as a collective force and move the needles at the university. Beyond that, the lack of precedents of mentorship between Appalachians at the university and the lack of presence within Appalachians within prominent roles at the university has led Appalachian students to really be boxed out of influential positions at the university. The third and final area of concern was learning how to assess and best hone the bountiful ability within students that do come from Appalachia. I will argue to the end of my days that the return on investment within giving Appalachian students opportunities at higher education institutions, it's definitely immeasurable. I can speak this for myself. The opportunities that I've been given here, not only am I grateful for, but also know the weight that they do carry with each and every opportunity I do have, because I have to take initiative on each and every one of those opportunities. So I think that the Appalachian student body really devoutly understands the magnitude of the opportunities that they're presented. The students that hail from Appalachia are truly fire tested. They have had to overcome the situations and barriers that would have prevented them from a four-year education, but obviously they prevailed. Despite the victory in simply being here, the readiness of the Appalachian students suffers due to their emotional, mental, financial, and temporal resources often being more invested on issues and problems that are not faced by most other students. So I've told you all the doom and gloom. My co-president, Ben, is now going to tell you about a few initiatives that we have in place to combat those. So thank you. Good job.
Hey, good morning, everybody. My name is Ben Johnson, and as Austin said, I'm co-president of Friends of Appalachia. I wanted to start by saying and resonating how grateful I am that you all are here and that we get to speak with you all this morning. This is super exciting, and it's been great to see all of this come to fruition and this be such a great plan for today. So I'm here to talk with you all about some of the things that we're doing as Friends of Appalachia to help students from Appalachian regions overcome some of these barriers that they're facing. So what we've come to know as being from the region is that growing up in Appalachia means understanding the importance of geographical factors on the creation of your communities. And in the shift to academia, a lot of times what that means is leaving the land that you feel so connected and dependent upon and have grown up in, and has just created your families and your communities and your friends, and how so much of your life has been based around that. And sometimes in that transitional phase, there's a big disconnect that needs to be overcome. And ways that we're trying to help that are, we have reached out to over 350 students that have been admitted to UVA from Appalachian regions and sent them all personal handwritten letters each year, with the goal of trying to break down these walls and saying that there is a familiar face here and you are not just going into the unknown. Additionally, we've been working to create initiatives and ways for these students to make it to grounds to visit. We've been communicating with different colleges, we've been communicating with UVA-wise, and we've been communicating with high schools to try and set up opportunities for these students to come here, see grounds, stay with us, and all of our members have been volunteering in that capacity to try and make it happen. Additionally, we've been thinking about collaborative courses and opportunities for students in these regions to get a taste of what UVA and higher ed looks like from their home, so that they can see that it's not so far-fetched and not so inaccessible that they may have beforehand believed. And lastly, we've been returning to our hometowns and to our high schools to talk to these students, to show them that their neighbors, their friends from growing up have made it here, and so can they. Additionally, we've been trying to increase the trust that students have between themselves and higher education. A lot of times for these communities, there is misunderstanding and a lack of information between what college is like and what it's like to get into college, and we've been trying to break that down. And ways that we've been doing that are reaching out to them through social media campaigns. So far, we have over 700 followers on our platforms and have reached over 35,000 people in the last engagements. And these are ways that we're advertising and showing them that there are people like them excelling in higher education. And additionally, we've been working to have personalized advertisement and stories shown to them, so that it's not just numbers and stats being thrown at them when they're looking at admissions, but true details that they need to know. We've been hoping to break down the lack of leadership attainment in these areas, because a lot of times when students make it out of their towns or make it out of their towns, there's not a lot of opportunity, or they don't think that there is, to go back and use their educations, and that's not true. And finally, we've been trying to provide leadership opportunities for these students once they get here. Friends of Appalachia has open forum style discussions and meetings so that students can take initiative on anything that they're excited about and really have some leadership, and then use the platform to have an exec position and make changes here at the university. And so, in sum, purpose here is just to create an open space for students so that they can excel. Thank you for listening.
All right, so I told you participation and engagement would be a big part of this session this morning. And what I want us to do now is to reflect a little bit on what each of our first three panelists have discussed in their own segments here. And I want us to be able to look at the question, and I have there we go, all right. I want us to address this question about trust that is often a barrier in the development of both human and social capital. So the question I have for all of you to take maybe 5-10 minutes to answer in discussion with one another is, what are the key pillars in building trust that enable individuals to step outside their comfort zones to excel? I think in Joy's presentation we saw a lot of that happening, but also in both Austin and Ben's examples, this recognition that trust is an important part of development. So what we can do, much like Chancellor Henry and Lewis Nelson before me mentioned, we want you to meet one another to maybe establish some potential for future partnership, but do so in answering this question. You have a few tools at your disposal on your tables. There's pens, there's note cards, so if you want to take notes, but ultimately come up with some answers to this question in particular and discuss that with one another. After that time, we'll sort of go around the room and see what the groups have come up with. So take maybe about 7 to 10 minutes to do that at your table. Okay. So we will just want to take a few minutes to get some reflection on the discussions that were happening at some of the tables, and we won't have time, obviously, to go to each table and to reflect on this question, but we will have time to do a few. So we have a microphone that will be passed around, and there's the runner. So if you raise your hand, just wait till he gets to you before you sort of begin speaking to the rest of the audience here. So again, the question is, what are the key pillars in building trust that enable individuals to step outside their comfort zones to excel? What did we come up with? Do we got a volunteer or two? Okay, great. Young lady here.
Hi, so what we said overall, what I was hearing from everyone saying is that basically building a relationship with the people that you're speaking with, having them being able to relate to you, showing where you come from and how you were at their age, or how you accomplished what you have so far, that you weren't at this level yet when you were at their age, or relating to people of different like socioeconomic backgrounds. Just allowing them to feel respected, and that way they're able to trust you more and be like, okay, I can get help from this person. They have a plan, they've done it, I have an example, and I can go ahead and go forward.
Good, thank you. So relationships being key for trust. What else? What else do we think was important here in addressing this question? Far left, here he comes, getting his steps in.
Our group believes strongly that residents who return to the area and demonstrate, how they've moved on and how they achieved this is very important. We also felt humility and curiosity to ask questions was very important. Stakeholders, we believe, could be these returning residents who come back and get involved with the community. And probably very important, we all felt, was to invest the time, whether coming from faculty or people returning, just very important that they invest their time in the area and show involvement.
Very good. Very good. Anyone else? Oh, here we are.
So I think we all landed on relationship, didn't we? And we all landed, one of the ways we talked about it, and I think that was important, that we talk about relationship over time. It's not a go in, take the love, and come back either way. And so relationship over time. And one of the things that I think was a remarkable addition to that was cognizance, knowledge, that out of respectful relationship, we begin to learn about each other and learn what's available for each other in that partnership.
Very good.
I think I saw a hand up over there somewhere. There we go. Sorry, limited by my foot speed.
Thank you. So in terms of education is the key to both poverty reduction and public health improvement. I want to know that what are the educational investments? It is my question and suggestion based on the trust. I think there is a big gap. We need to reduce this gap, obviously. And also this is a very important, the educational investment, we should be thinking very keenly in this region.
We talked a little bit about working with people from other cultures that speak other languages and how it could be important to have someone who speaks their language, if at all possible, or to use interpreter services and to use food and drink, tea, et cetera, to get to know each other.
Any others? I like that suggestion, by the way, of the food and the beverage. That's always a good one to bring people together for sure. Any other? Oh, here we go. All right.
In looking at the question, we talked about key pillars being cultural humility, respect, the idea of community, partnering to build capacity, and partnering for sustainable economic development.
Yeah, and that idea and the comment of cultural humility, I think, is a big one because it allows us some level of self-reflection on assumptions we have about what's important to us, but also forcing us to think about what's important and what are the value sets of others in our exchange with them. So that's a very, very good one. Any other last, oh, here we go, we got one more. Okay, last one. That's you, yeah.
Hi, I think our discussion really centered around kind of two concepts, vulnerability and authenticity, which are kind of interrelated in terms of being open to be your own self when you're interacting with groups of people and sharing, common experiences that you have with those folks, even if you're not necessarily right from where they're from, but also kind of being aware of the differences between who you are and who they are, and being open not only to showing your own vulnerability, but receiving the vulnerability of others, which can sometimes make us uncomfortable.
Yeah, very good. Thank you all for that level of participation. We have one more question before this session will conclude, but before that, we will have Becky O'Quinn to speak with us on the Rise Emerging Leaders program at UVA-Wise. Becky.
Well, good morning. How are you? Well, I was really nervous this morning about speaking. I was over to the side waiting to come up on stage, and I started looking at the slideshow, and there's a slide up there. You'll see it at some point, but it's just a field full of hay bales. That's my community, and I love that. Every day as I drive home, I pass through that community, and so that made me feel a little bit better. And I just wanted to first ask you, how many of you really love the community that you live in?
It's right there.
Just everybody yell out, what's something that's unique about your community? Tell me something that you love about your community. Caring neighbors. The mountains? What else? I'm sorry? Music. The music. Diversity. I'm sorry? The food, yes. Well, I'm here today to speak to you about the RISE Emerging Leadership Program, but in order to really give you a good picture of the RISE Emerging Leadership Program, I need to start with Raleigh, Southwest Virginia. And Raleigh, Southwest Virginia, hold on, I've got the wrong clicker. Raleigh, Southwest Virginia is a program that started through conversations through Opportunity Southwest Virginia. And it began in 2015. And this is a program that has been designed to enhance leadership capacity in communities. And it is a small $3,000 mini grant program. And a Raleigh coordinator goes into the community, learns about the community, and so congratulations, you did a very abbreviated first meeting that a Raleigh community coordinator would do in the community, because they'll go into the community and say, what do you love about your community? Tell me about your community. Because people are passionate about their communities and they want to see their communities grow. And the Raleigh coordinator will work with the community to help either create a community group or improve the skills of a community group to complete a project. And the project will be going through that $3,000 mini grant. So in the initial phases, the Raleigh coordinator works with them to help them build consensus to choose a Raleigh project. Once that Raleigh project has been chosen, the coordinator actually kind of flips roles. The community group chooses a project lead from their own community group, and the Raleigh coordinator then becomes the mentor and the coach to the project lead, and also begins to help them, helps the whole group with leadership training. Sorry, this is one that I usually use so much. So here are just a few examples of some of the completed Raleigh projects. Now, Raleigh stands for Real Action Leadership Learning. We all know that the best way that we learn is to have experiential learning, and so we want action throughout the entire time that we're doing this project. At the top, you'll see all of these projects were wayfinding signs. Now, these are small communities that often cannot afford to just renew or have new signs, so our project helps them do that. The top is Pembroke, and Pembroke put wayfinding signs in close to, there's a lake there. It's a very popular lake that people go and do kayaking, but there was no signage there. So you just had to use your GPS, or once you got into town, ask somebody. So this was actually a way to provide signs there and signs at the lake. The bottom left is Appalachia. Appalachia had not had new wayfinding signs since 1970s. And so this provided new updated signs coming into the community. And the bottom one is Daint. Daint is a really small community, but it had no wayfinding signs in it. That community is a very strong community group. It's our smallest community that we've done a Raleigh program in, yet we had the largest number of community in the community group show up every time for the meetings. This prepared Daint because right after this, they actually were awarded a large grant. So through our Raleigh initiative, they have built the skills to go ahead now and work through that large grant. So RALLY stands for Real Action Leadership Learning. Do you know what the Y stands for? I'm sorry? You. That's good. Y stands for yay, because anytime that we finish a project, we want the community to celebrate that we have finished that project. Another few examples. At the top, this is Coburn. Coburn wanted a love sign. They wanted something that would draw the tourists and the community into town to come see their park. And people take their photos there all the time. I'm on social media, and I'll see people posting photos that they've been to Coburn. They've got pictures there in front of the sign. The bottom left, you'll see, is an outdoor theater, and that's Gate City. So Gate City wants to revitalize their theater. It's an old theater there, and they're trying to raise money for it, so they got the idea to gut what they had, because they're going to have to anyway, clean it all up, put lights up, and now they do outdoor theater, and they charge for the movies, and everything that they receive for that goes towards the development of the theater later in the future. And the bottom right is Big Stone Gap. Big Stone Gap had a park in their town. The park had gotten a little run down. They didn't have the funds to fix it. So they used the funding for that to fix it up, clean it up, make it look aesthetically pleasing now, and they held a celebration there at Christmas time. So all small projects, but the community was involved in doing that. The next phase that we went into was Rally 2.0. We added a community builder. Actually, we added 4 community builders to the project. It's a $5,000 mini grant, so there was a little bit more money for the community. They continued to work on project management and project development, and they continued to work on leadership training. Oh, I need to go back. Thank you. So there were 4 community builders this year. This was a pilot year. They went into the communities, and they helped to enhance the capacity in the communities. A lot of the rural communities are struggling with capacity just to finish projects. We had some communities that had gotten community block development grants or downtown revitalization grants. There were projects there to do, but they didn't have the hands to do the projects. And so those community builders came in and helped pick those projects up and get those projects started. They also helped coordinate and lead Rally 2 projects. In the process, those community builders actually built their own leadership skills as well. And I'm proud to say one community builder is with the University of Virginia College at Wise. They are with our Economic Development Department now, so it worked out well. So some of the projects that they finished was, you see the top slide, that's the St. Paul project. They finished what was called the fish fence. And that's a fence that was not real pretty, that goes into town, but as it leads out of town, it actually leads to the Clinch River. So they put fish up and meet us at the Clinch, and if you follow that and keep going, you'll actually end up at the Clinch River. The bottom left is a stage that Dungannon did, and that's a stage for some community entertainment. You see that there's barn quilts there that go all around the stage. Community members all got together, and each community member made a barn quilt to go on that stage, as well as the town manager also made several barn quilts. The middle one is a portable stage. That's Norton's. So that stage can be used anywhere. You can just rent it out and use that for any community event. And the bottom right was Hayside. You don't see that, but that was a large digital sign. Hayside's a really small town, but they get a lot of outdoor recreation, so that was used for that. So over the past, there has been $74,000 that has been invested in the rally. So we layer that now and move into the Emerging Leadership Program as we continue to build on leadership capacity in the Southwest Virginia region. we see that there's a huge need for emerging leaders or leaders to rise up and to be able to build their leadership skills so they can serve on boards and on councils and on committees that will affect their communities and help their communities grow. So the Rise of Emerging Leadership program equips leaders to have greater influence and impact on those committees and on those councils. We help them see the value of partnering and partnerships within the communities and outside the communities as they work together, because the participants come from all 4 planning districts. They also learn how to network together and work together, and it prepares us now for the next generation of emerging leaders. So our Emerging Leadership program will launch May 14th. I'm excited because Larry Terry is actually going to be the guest speaker for our launch for the Emerging Leadership program. But all of this takes partnerships. So throughout the years, our Emerging Leadership program is a product of us and an ARC grant. And American Electric Power is also helping us sponsor this program. But through the years of Rally and with the Emerging Leadership program, we've partnered with DHCD, Friends of West Virginia, or Friends of Southwest Virginia, Virginia Tourism, and all the planning districts and Opportunity Southwest Virginia. And we could not have succeeded without their partnerships, either in funding. They helped us do the leadership program. They sometimes helped us with curriculum, and they were there for support. So it takes a network of partnerships to see the region succeed. Thank you.
Okay, amazing concept and amazing work, and I'm looking forward to that May 14th event. So before we conclude, we would like to ask one more question to the group again for some group discussion. And again, that question is, how do we identify shared values and goals to promote regional strategies? I think this last presentation in particular really highlighted building capacity through regional partnerships, relationships, and so part of that has to do with understanding things that we definitely have in common. And again, this interconnectivity of our social and human capital. So the question for the groups, again, how do we identify shared values and goals to promote regional strategies? So maybe take 5 to 7 minutes, and again, we'll reflect on the back end of that with some comments from you. So ready? Begin. Okay, so as we conclude this session, just want to get a few responses from you all again to address this question about identifying shared values and goals to promote regional strategies. So how do we engage in that kind of work, which again I think even in of itself is a hallmark of leadership and understanding the role that values and goals play. So what did we come up with in our groups? What are some of the thoughts, sort of points of discussion? We've got a hand over here to the right, your left.
So I'm not going to articulate this as well as I cohort here, but we just talked about being careful with the vocabulary in seeking to find commonality, to not then try to impose our particular values or goals upon others. And we have people here who work in the school systems, and so you go into a school and ask, what does the school administration and teachers, what do they want, what do they need, and then try to respond with resources. So just being careful about that lens of, are we really finding commonality, or are we kind of putting our agenda onto others? And then instead of doing that, asking questions and then responding with resources. Did I capture it? We add to it? Okay.
That was great. Yeah, thank you.
Our group came up with the need for dialogue, and when this dialogue takes place, there needs to be hefty representation from within the community, because sometimes we get in these groups and, you know, you've got 10 bureaucrats and then 1 or 2 people from the community, and when you walk away, you haven't really met the needs of that community. So it's important to have people in the community at the table with substantial representation to have these conversations.
Dialogue and representation, very good.
So we thought about kind of this idea of getting out and how sort of people within communities and education is associated with a kind of escape, and sort of trying to think what it would look like to re-articulate education more in terms of what it could put back in, which you described as a cycle back into rather than a ladder out of. So I think thinking about what sort of possibilities education has for folding back into communities rather than just seeing people leave them is quite an important one as well.
Very good. Very good. Other thoughts? 2. Okay.
So we actually came up with most of those as well, but one of the sort of main things we discussed was identifying and dealing with barriers to creating those shared values, I guess. Some of the ones we talked about were hopelessness, scarcity, and tribalism, even from one small community to the next in terms of we have so few resources, how are we going to get what we need and not be so worried about the people next door. And not forgetting the non-traditional student path, that folks who are beyond high school or beyond the typical college period can also contribute vastly to these communities.
Okay, good. There was one over here to the left.
I'm going to try not to get on a soapbox here, but I really appreciate that you put shared values and goals up there, the values part. I think part of this is also identifying what the values and goals are, period, that aren't shared, and taking the time to understand. We're very quick to ask what your goals are, all right? And there's a lot of ways we respond, whether that's someone mentioned just dumping resources but we're not quick to ask about values and why things are the way they are or how they are. And sometimes, because of that, we end up destroying good things and people in the process. And so I think and that takes a lot of time. And that's not the way that we set up our funding schemes. It's not the way we were talking about, applying for public health grants and things like that. You have to say, like, this is what we're going to do, and these are the impact. And then you go into the community and you realize, we're not going to do any of that. That's terrible. But I think it's really important that we spend some time understanding the values, period, before we talk about what are shared.
Very good. Any others? Hand over here.
We talked last question about relationships, and we think that when we get to this aspect, to not forget those relationships, to be willing to be intentional with relationships and not hold your meeting and expect people to come to you, but to want to do and be willing to do non-traditional meeting aspects, such as holding a front porch meeting in someone's community or a fish fry or a musical aspect, and just being willing to meet the community in places that they're comfortable to meet rather than expecting them to come to you, and being aware that within communities there are different smaller communities and that they might want to meet in different places than other people, and just being intentional about making sure everyone's involved in a way that makes them comfortable.
Excellent. We have time for one more if there's, yeah.
Just wanted you to know I got elected to be spokesperson only because I was the only person at the table with a bow tie on, right? We had a very vigorous discussion which could go on for a long, long time about what it means to be bottom up in thinking, that we indoctrinate ourselves in sort of a top-down operational level in the institutions we are, and how is it, whether it's at the faculty level, the student level, or community-based level, that we look at all the things we want to do together as community and within the frame of shared values to make things community-based. It has to be an intentional discussion, and it has to discuss the values and the standards and the way we proceed at the community level.
That's great, and I'm a big believer myself in the value of process, and a lot of times we are driven by sort of products and outcomes or outputs, but sometimes we overlook the process itself, how inclusive it is, how intentional it might be. Are we actually getting the representation we need in the process so that the things that we produce through our work are actually accepted and seen as viable? So I appreciate all of your comments, your thoughts on this today. Can I first get a big round of applause for our panel who did an amazing job? Again, thank you all for this opportunity, and have a good rest of the day. Thank you.